Hi, my name is Brian Blunt. I'm with Times Fiber Communications, here today to talk about F-connector installation training. I'm going to cover some of the pitfalls that normally happen with F-connector installation. Also going to talk about some pretty basic stuff, what the F-connector's job is, what can happen if we do it wrong, and then of course what happens when we do it correctly. Might cover some pretty unique stuff with Times Fiber, especially considering our tooling package and some of the training methodologies that we're going to talk about today. Maybe some new stuff that you haven't heard. I'll start off by saying, for those guys that have been installing these things for years and years and years, bear with me. There may be some tricks that you may learn today. And if not, hey, maybe you can point out something that I'm doing wrong and just send me a letter, because we're always interested in continuous improvement here at Times Fiber. So the first thing I'd like to do today is just talk about the F-connector itself. This is what we're talking about. This is the Times Fiber QC2 Quick Connect F-connector. And the first question that I have rhetorically is, what is the F-connector's job? Not something that we spend a lot of time thinking about each day, but it should be something that at least we understand. So first of all, the first thing that we'll talk about with the F-connector is simple stability. Without the F-connector, what you see is you'll have something like this, which is simply a prepped piece of cable inserted into a splitter port with nothing to keep it stable, nothing to shield it, nothing to protect it whatsoever. We may see this out in the field. When we do, it usually means one thing, and that is someone stealing cable, because we as the cable technician or the cable operator certainly have not done that kind of job. We know that we have to put an F-connector on the end of that cable. We mentioned shielding. Shielding is probably the primary function of the F-connector. Its job is to keep all of our signals in where they're supposed to be and going where they're supposed to go, and make sure that those signals don't escape out. If they escape out, we call that egress. Egress is bad. The FCC does not like egress. We tend to operate on similar frequencies as airplanes. So if our cable signal is leaking out, that can be very, very destructive. The other thing we have to do is we have to make sure that no outside signals like noise from broadcast operators or your garage door opener, your refrigerator, anything electrical in your home or in your environment creates what we call noise. We want to keep that noise out of our system. The F-connector does that as well. It also provides grounding, a closed loop circuit that is very, very important to maintaining that shielding effectiveness. So the F-connector, although there are millions and millions and millions of them out there and they're very, very small and somewhat inexpensive, they are primarily the most important piece of equipment that we're putting on each day out in the field. That being said, let's start talking about the way that we install these, and before we do that, we need to talk about what we install it on. So we're going to take a few moments and just talk very briefly about cable and cable builds. What we'll be talking about is, first of all, we have standard cable. Standard cable, as you can see, is very basic, consists of a center conductor surrounded by a dielectric, which is covered with tape. We call it APA tape. There is then braid around that APA tape, and then all of that is covered by a jacket. Now the center conductor's job is to simply make the signal go from point A to point B. So from the head end all the way to the customer premise, that signal is traveling along that center conductor. Now if anybody knows what the center conductor is made out of, it is made out of copper-clad steel. It is not a solid copper center conductor. We use a steel core, and then we just put a very thin layer of copper around that center conductor. The reason why it's important to understand that is because cable signal operates on what's called the skin effect. That means that no matter what that center conductor is made out of, whether it's solid copper or just a very thin skin of copper around a copper-clad steel, all of the cable signal frequencies travel on the outside skin of that conductor. So it allows us to make a cost-effective cable by not using a solid copper, add some rigidity and strength to it. But the downside of that is if we scrape or nick that center conductor, because we only have that thin skin, it's going to drastically negatively impact the